But it's time to move on to our speaker. As you know, today's program is Women in Pants, Bicycles, Bloomers, and the New Woman of the 1890s. Our speaker, Chiara Power, joined the Mass team as collections manager and registrar in 2025. Before moving to Ohio, she lived in several Canadian cities, including Waterloo, Montreal, Halifax, and Edmonton. I admire the fact that you've chosen to live in downtown Massillon. It makes me very happy. Chiara has a BA in History and Costume Studies from the Dalhousie, I forgot to ask you how to pronounce that, University, and MA in Material Culture from the University of Alberta. The research for her master's degree looked at the effects of the linen shirt and shift on colonial dynamics of the 17th century in North America. How's that for specific?
Very.
She brings so much professionalism and knowledge to our amazing staff, so I hope you will welcome her. Thank you.
Thank you, Margie. And welcome, everyone, to my presentation today, looking at Women in Pants, Bicycles, Bloomers, and the New Woman of the 1890s. So to begin with women wearing pants, as I think most, if not all, women here today seem to be wearing pants, we need to go back to a time when women wearing pants was truly scandalous, if not unthinkable. So I'm going to go back to the 1860s, when the silhouette for women was small waists and big skirts. This was a typical dress from our collection here at the museum, and to achieve this silhouette requires quite a bit of architecture underneath it. So this is a bit of a later corset. This is actually Ida McKinley's corset. If you came to Gilding, Northeast Ohio 2 years ago now, you might recognize it. But this is a typical sort of undergarment that women were wearing at this time. And there's actually quite a bit of steel inside of this garment. This silhouette of the 1860s required quite a bit of strong materials. So later, post-industrial revolution, we have these steel corsets. Before that was often from whale baleen. Underneath these hoops, after the Industrial Revolution, becomes made of steel as well. So quite a bit of steel creating the shape of a woman at this time. But this was actually an improvement off of the many, many layers of petticoats that would have come before. It's lighter, it's easier, as much as it's hard to believe. However, there were some women for this was still far too much, and they had some serious concerns about women's fashion. They believed that these tight silhouettes could cause diseases such as tuberculosis. They could impact women's fertility. They could cause all sorts of problems with women and their clothing. Those long skirts could get caught in fires, wagon wheels. They could drag dirt into the home. They were all in all impractical and difficult for women to move in. So these dress reformers had a solution, the bloomer suit, so called after Amelia Bloomer, who was a strong proponent of this suit. It had much of the same silhouette of the day, that high neck, long sleeves, small waist, and skirt, but the skirt ends at the knees so that a woman could have more movement and those long hems weren't dragging dirt into the home. She still maintains her modesty with her baggy pants going down to her ankles, however. And they were real. It was not just an idea. They were made, they were worn. However, they were not necessarily the most popular. These dress reformers pushed for this to wear as being much safer for women, much more practical. However, there were many people in society who did not like this idea of women wearing pants. They believed that these pants might cause women to run wild. And the women who wore these suits often faced derision in newspapers, but also in person. There's accounts of people throwing things at women wearing these suits, and women wearing them thought they were maybe not the most fashionable and had fears around being mistaken for men if they wore them. I'm not sure I see it, personally. So here's a comic here that shows the larger social concerns that came out of this. There were beliefs that women wearing pants would upend the whole social order, and that, shockingly, everyone might believe in equality. So we have here a man, after the victory of the bloomer suit, sitting sad, forlorn, sewing his own clothes, while his wife sits behind him in her pants. And then, concerningly and interestingly for me, behind them, a young servant and a young enslaved woman holding signs advocating for their own freedom from work. So you begin to see these ideas that women wearing pants will lead to them wanting rights, will lead to other people wanting rights, lower classes, and enslaved people wanting their freedom. And I would call it ridiculous if that's not exactly what happened. So unfortunately, the bloomer suit is not able to stand up to this derision. They are not successful in getting women to wear it. Many women don't like it and are not able to take on the social pressure. They enjoy their fashions. So the bloomer suit gets sidelined into history as an oddity and sort of a fashionable experiment gone wrong until enter the bicycle. In the 1880s, we get the bicycle, sometimes penny farthing, high wheel bicycle. And at this point, it is not exactly a practical mode of transportation. This is our bicycle upstairs. If you've ever seen it, you'll know exactly how tall it is. Here we have a man for scale. These wheels were extremely tall. Getting onto the bicycle often involved standing on that back small wheel and jumping into the seat as it started to roll. They were not the most stable. If you hit rough roads, uphills, downhills, anything, you're gonna fall over. And since it's quite tall, that can be quite dangerous. Nevertheless, there are many men who are very enthusiastic about their high wheel bicycles. It is a new, daring, athletic adventure. And there are many groups, including in here, there's the high wheel, oh dear, I'm forgetting their name now, but if you come to the Lincoln Highway exhibit opening this Saturday, you can learn more about the high wheel men of Massillon and Canton who helped push forwards for good roads. Because being on these bicycles, it is very important to be on good roads. So they were very strong advocates for us getting new roads and help get us the Lincoln Highway. So at this time, women are not necessarily riding bicycles very often. Getting up there in a skirt is quite difficult. The skirts of the 1880s have changed a little bit. We no longer have those big, wide hems with quite the same concerns of getting caught in fires. However, there's still quite a bit of architecture under there. The hoops have just moved to the back with the bustle. Quite a bit of steel, a lot of skirt. And climbing on top of that high wheel bicycle in that would be borderline, if not entirely, impossible. There was suggested and manufactured tricycles. These were the ladies' quadrant tricycle from a booklet in our collection here. You can see a woman here riding with all of her high wheel men. However, the tricycle never really gained the same popularity as the bicycle. It did not have the same ability to turn quickly, the same athleticism, mobility, agility as the bicycle. So while they were manufactured, some women may have ridden them. They were not necessarily highly popular. The high wheel bicycle most certainly was. Even President McKinley, when he was on his campaign trail, appealed to what he called the bicycle block and encouraged these cycling groups to come to him in Canton instead of going on a whistle-stop tour of his own. He got the cyclists to come to him. So this changes with the invention of the safety bicycle, also known as what we would call an ordinary bicycle today. And you can see here from along the canal, the state of the roads at the time did make it quite difficult. The safety bicycle changed things. It now had gears. The wheels could be the same size and the wheels could be smaller. We're also starting to get rubber tires for a smoother, faster, and much safer ride. Some men do try to hang on to their high wheel bicycle, considering them more fun. I think the danger was probably part of that. However, the safety bicycle is simply faster and therefore gets picked up by all of these new athletes. With the invention of the safety bicycle, it becomes more accessible for women. Women's clothing, ooh, that's a bit dark, sorry. But if you came to gilding, you'll know what you're looking at here. But women's skirts have gotten a bit wider at the hem again. They're still very long. They're still wearing corsets. There's still a lot of fabric that can get trapped in these gears, in these wheels. Anyone rides bikes today, I think we've all had the experience of getting your pant cuff caught in the gears. It's very unpleasant. And a big skirt like this would most certainly get caught. Even men's pants, you can't see it very well back there, but they are wearing, where did he go? Shorter and tighter pants than would typically be used or worn by grown men. These shorter knee breeches were very common for children. Once you were a grown man, your pants went down to your ankles. But cyclists were finding their pants getting caught in their bicycle wheels, and for safety and practicality are starting to wear knee breeches. women start riding bicycles, and bicycles start being manufactured for women. They have this sort of dropped center bar instead. So a woman could bicycle with a skirt. So instead of having to pull her skirt over that center bar, she could just sit at the bicycle. Still a lot of fabric in a skirt that might get caught in the wheels and gears. And there were some complaints by some of the more athletic, boundary-pushing cyclists out there that these women's bicycles were less agile, they were heavier, and there's some difficulties of having that bar being lower down. But women start cycling, and they start creating their own cycling groups. Many of them were not allowed into these high wheelmen society. The wheelmen are not allowing women to their groups, so women form their own. And with that, they start to make uniforms. Looking for a proper uniform for the respectable lady cyclist, they turn to the closest thing women to have to athletic wear at the time, which is the riding habit. So sort of the acceptable upper class women's clothing or activity at the time was riding, and riding side saddle. So you'll notice her hem is a little uneven here. It's because you have one knee hooked over that horn of the saddle, and then other foot in the stirrup, and enough skirt to cover your legs very modestly. So when women are first building cycling suits, they're sort of pulling from here, pulling from the skirt. And there's a group in Buffalo that specifically discussed choosing a more riding habit style versus a bloomer style because of the respectability. The idea of wearing pants still had a bit of a hint of scandal around it. So they really wanted to pull something that would give them respectability and let their sport be taken seriously. The practicality of it was lacking, so they started to develop things like this, secret pants. It is actually two big skirts, essentially, with a panel on the front that could be buttoned and unbuttoned. So you could ride your bicycle, but if you stopped somewhere, you could button your panel on over front, and then look like you're wearing a skirt, and then hop on your bicycle and cycle off again. Again, there's so much fabric, I cannot imagine you're not getting caught in your bicycle wheels here. So we have the bloomer suit, which you might be able to tell inspired me greatly. So the bloomer suit is resurrected from the 1850s, now with a practical purpose. Women are finding a way to wear pants that is still comfortable and suits their modesty and fashion of the time. So very big baggy pants, now no longer going to the ankle, but tightened up around the knees to not get caught in those bicycle wheels, and many jackets sort of going down to create that skirt effect over as top. So women are wearing pants. Many people are deeply concerned about this. There is scandal around women's pants, and interestingly, mirroring the criticisms of the tight corsets, people are worried that women on bicycles is gonna harm their fertility and give them tuberculosis, and all the same concerns come up, but now for pants instead of corsets. Women can't quite win at this time. So the bicycle suit becomes quite popular among women. However, there are some deep criticisms of this, of women wearing it, and famous suffragette Elizabeth Cady Stanton had some words to say about that. Men found that flying coattails were ungainly and that baggy trousers were in the way when cycling, so they changed their dress to suit themselves and we didn't interfere. They have taken in every reef and sail and appear in skin-tight garments. We did not bother our heads about it, their cycling clothes, and why should they meddle in what we want to wear? I agree. I do find her categorization of skin tight a little different than what we would say today. But you can see here the way cycling had changed men's clothing. Like I said before, these knee pants, also showing a little bit of scandalous knee there, sir, were largely for children. Grown men didn't wear them very often. They typically wore longer pants, as well as wearing a vest and a jacket. Wearing just their shirt sleeves out in public would be considered getting a bit close to nudity for everyone's comfort, frankly. Women typically kept their jackets on still. That was a bit immodest. Sometimes they'd be wearing just their shirt sleeves, and their pants tended to be a bit baggier. Many women were still quite uncomfortable with the idea of the shape of their hips being seen, so they're wearing very, very big, baggy bloomers. And unlike 1850, where this criticism towards the bloomer suit did cause the movement to fail, did cause women to stop wearing it, there was no such success this time. Women enjoyed cycling far too much. They now had a practical reason to ride their bicycles, and women were riding far and wide across the country and truly pushing this new sport along with men and enjoying it very much, it seems. It is difficult, I'll say, to find photos of women wearing their pants. There's many, many images of women in bloomers in drawings and images on catalogs, but finding actual photographs of them I found quite hard. I had to go to England for this one, not literally. They had it online. I think it was because there was still a bit of this taboo attached to the idea of women wearing pants, and photos at the time weren't what they are today, where we just snap one without thinking about it. The candid didn't necessarily exist. With large exposure times, heavy equipment, you had to get people to pose, and I think getting women to pose in their bloomers might have been a little bit difficult. But we have this very lovely image of these two girls walking along a harbor in their bloomers, which I love. So were they still wearing corsets? The answer is almost certainly yes. Bicycles are getting less expensive at this time, but they are still quite expensive, around the cost of a horse. A horse then, not a horse now. I think horses have gotten more expensive. Not sure about horse inflation. But for an upper class woman, a middle class woman, wearing a corset was a necessity. We see this across, that even women who are incarcerated have corsets. Wearing a corset was an important part of your support wear and just something that you did. So this is a sort of a sport corset that was manufactured. You can see there's a lot less fabric in there, empty spaces to allow you to sweat where you're out doing your athletic activities. It's not exactly clear how many women were actually wearing these and how many were just wearing their normal sort of everyday corset. People don't like to write about their underwear and leave us really detailed historical notes about what they were doing. However, we do know they are being manufactured. So companies are trying to cash in on this market of athletic women. And we start to see here the idea of the athletic woman emerging as something that is good. So this is the new woman of the 1890s. The Gilded Age is a time of social change. And along with this, we start to see increased science as a discipline is growing with the post-industrial revolution. And with that domestic science, home economics as a field is developing as well. And the idea that you can improve your life. Now, there's a scientifically better way to live, to have healthier families. And part of this is the idea of exercise. So in the past, many health advice for women was often more along the lines of maybe go to the seaside if you can afford it, but being quiet, being gentle, staying at home, the fainting couch sort of idea, that women were frail and needed rest. And this time, we need to get women outside, we need to get everyone outside doing activities, daily constitutional walks, that sort of idea. And if you're wondering if you can ride in a corset, yes you can, I tried it. I'm not wearing the corset today because it isn't the most comfortable thing in the world, but I did try it out on a bicycle. It's surprisingly easy to cycle in a corset. Once you stop, you're gonna keep breathing heavy for 2 to 4 hours. You can't, once your breath is gone, your breath is gone. So the bloomer suit, now that it has become popularized by the cyclists, does not remain only in cycling suits. This here is from our collection. It is a basketball uniform from Massillon High School in 1905. And it's kind of hard to see, but there are actually some pants hidden underneath that skirt. So this is a big change in women's clothing. Women had participated in activities and sports, but there was a limit to it. If you're afraid of falling down or your skirt coming up, having the pants underneath allows women to jump and run and fall down and have much more freedom of motion and embrace these sports like never before. We also see it go into bathing suits, much more trim and athletic than the past. I always think these would be horrible to swim in. They're made out of wool. It's a lot. However, again, this is an improvement of just swimming in a dress of the past. It is lighter, there is more movement, and you could swim without worrying about your skirt floating up to your neck. And we do have proof that people got wet in these wool suits. And they went swimming on the seasides and wore black stockings. So the idea of modesty around women is changing a bit, where having the shape of your calves out is not as scandalous as it would have been in the 1850s. In that early bloomer suit, the loose pant went right down to the ankles. You couldn't see the shape of her legs at all. Now women are starting to bring out their calf. The thigh is a bit much, that won't come for a while, but still has to be covered by a layer. The idea of just having a naked leg for women is still quite taboo at this time. So the pant is not embraced wholeheartedly immediately. We have these bloomers, women are out wearing them, but it's largely restricted to athletic activities for a long time. Here in the 1920s, we have these two cyclists, and you notice we've moved away from the really huge, several yards of fabric bloomers, and they've gotten a bit more narrow, mimicking these post-World War I styles where dresses got more narrow, get more of that flapper dress aesthetic coming in as well. Women are pushing the boundaries of what is considered appropriate clothing for them to wear. But they are still mostly sticking to pants for athletic activities like cycling. Here we have the 1960s. I thought the 1960s would be easy to find pants. It was not easy to find a photo of women wearing pants in downtown Massillon until I found this lovely lady and I think her son going shopping in pants. At this point, women are wearing pants, but they are not considered formal wear or proper wear. First time I gave this talk was to a group of university women, and they were telling me afterwards, I was saying how surprised I was with the 1960s. I figured there'd be tons of photos of women in pants. And they were telling me that in their university lectures in the 1960s, they weren't allowed to wear pants on campus into lectures. It wasn't considered proper for them to wear pants. That was interesting to hear from people who lived through it, how long it took for that taboo around pants and women to go away. And then here we have 1970s, some glorious bell-bottomed jeans there. Pants become wholeheartedly embraced by everyone. And we also see jeans moving into women's clothing as well. And just a fun note that I think is interesting, if you've ever worn women's dress pants and women's jeans, you might notice that they close different ways. And that's because dress pants are children of the bloomers. So they come from pants that were made for women from the beginning. Bloomers were always made for women, so they close like women's clothes. All women's clothes close right over left. Men's clothes are manufactured left over right. But jeans weren't manufactured for women. They were working men's pants that actually come from like the 1600s. So they were considered men's workwear, and then teens sort of appropriated them as a fun, fashionable item, and girls just started wearing their brother's pants or buying men's pants. So to this day, women's jeans are still made like men's pants because they actually aren't part of the same evolutionary tree in how they came to be. They were actually just men's clothing that women took, whereas women's dress pants were women's clothing from the start, which I always find a bit interesting. So that brings us more or less to the end of our journey through pants, from the 1890s through to today, where we're all wearing our pants. And I just want to say I am very grateful for all the women who pushed against that derision and the mockery that they faced so that we could wear pants today that allow us to do activities that we love, whether it's sports or pottery, safely and comfortably in the clothing that we like. Thank you.
Really wonderful. You don't feel like buoyant? Mandy, do you have a question?
I would love to see what you are actually wearing.
Oh, yes, here. I'll take it. So I, like Marie said at the beginning, I did my undergrad in costuming and history, and our final project, we had to create an outfit, look at something in the past, and recreate it. Can I find it? Yes. So this is from the Kyoto Costume Institute in Japan, and I loved it. We were given 1895. We had to create something from 1895, so I got pattern books, some pattern books from the 1890s, and drafted the patterns myself from those patterning books, fitted on myself, and sewed the whole thing. And so I'm ready to go cycling. Yes. Yes, you had a question.
So what colors were popular, for the fabric and with the women?
Absolutely. It depends on what you're talking about. For a lot of the cycling clothes, it tends to be more of these browns, dark blues, blacks, dark grays, because you're getting quite dusty. Looking at those old dirt roads, dirt is going everywhere. You're going to get covered in dust from head to toe. So you don't necessarily want like a white or those really pale colors. Frequently, even when people are driving cars at the time, if you've been on the second floor, you'll see that duster beside the Jewel upstairs. That was the same reason. You wanted something to cover your clothing that wouldn't necessarily show the dirt. At this time, there are some more flashy cycling suits because it's new, because it's fashionable, it's fun, and you're showing off a little bit. So, especially in the 1890s, this is very much a wealthy woman's sport. Buying a bicycle, having the time to go for a 6-hour bike ride is not necessarily you have if you're a working class woman. So they are a bit fancier, a bit flashier, but still sticking to colors that won't show the dirt. Outside of that, every color in the book. In the 1860s, you get the invention of aniline dyes, so the first like artificial dyes. And so I'd say like the mid-Victorian, like 1860s through 1890s are like electric because they're getting these bright, bright colors for the first time and they go crazy with it. We don't necessarily see it now. A lot of our textiles we have in our collection are actually quite faded, even if they still look fairly bright. So we tend to think of, I don't know, at least I do, like the Sherlock Holmes, like heavy smog on the city, everything's gray. But a lot of Victorian clothes were like bright purple, lime green. We get like the arsenic green is the thing we worry about in our collection. So quite poisonous dyes, but it is a gorgeous, I don't think anyone's wearing it here, but almost lime green, like punch you in the face green. This is a time of color experimentation and people are really, really having fun with it, but not so much for the outside clothes. Yeah. Yes.
The bottom of the bloomer,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't have elastic then, right?
Ooh, when did elastic come in? You would have elastic actually, maybe at least by the early 1900s there is elastic. Mine is just twill tape tied.
Okay.
Because,
So like a drawstring?
yep,
Okay.
it's a bit more common and it's easier because also the elastic wears out, especially early elastics. That natural rubber doesn't stick as well. Yes, I don't know the exact invention of elastic, but it is around this time it comes in. Sort of that Blundstone shoe, interestingly, is historically accurate for like 1910. It really hasn't changed, that elastic-sided shoe. But especially if you're making the clothing, it's easier just to get a tie. Yeah.
Were there manufacturers who were putting these out for sale, or did women make them themselves?
I do believe that they were mostly being made custom order, especially 1890s. Trying to think of like the catalogs. Once you get to like the Eaton catalog, the Sears catalog, I think there's some examples of bloomers in there, but especially the early 1890s when women are getting into it, again, it's mostly wealthy women, so they're getting most of their clothes custom made anyway. But it's not a far cry from what people are making, I will say. This kind of suit jacket is kind of becoming fashionable. Women are borrowing from menswear. They are starting to wear sort of jacket suits anyway, fashionably. The cycling suits you can see like a little bit longer because you're not wearing a skirt and women are trying to hide a little bit more. But like I said, I found this it was a early pattern drafting book, and they did have your bicycling bloomers as one of the patterns in there, which was interesting to see that women were starting to make it at home. Yes, a lot of the factory-made clothes, you have to make a lot to make money, so you're mostly seeing things like shirts at first, because everyone has them, everyone has 3 or 4. So you need something you can sell in bulk, and bloomers aren't necessarily worth the time and money of training your factory workers on how to sew and draft them when people might own one. Yes?
It's very uncomfortable and warm.
It's quite warm. It's not horribly uncomfortable, I will say, especially because I'm not wearing the corset. The corset makes it worse.
You're also not bicycling in the summertime.
I'm not bicycling in the summertime, yes. Yes, they're wearing a lot of wool at this time. I think you must just be used to being warmer. I certainly wouldn't go cycling on an 85-degree day in this. Like we saw those women who were wearing just their shirt and the bloomers, I think they'd probably do that. It's an interesting conception at the time that even men wearing like a suit jacket outside, they sort of would. Like wearing your 3-piece suit all the time, if you're in public, is acceptable. If you're inside at a counter, maybe you could take off the jacket, not the vest. Wearing only the shirt was a little bit more heavy labor. So if you're cycling heavily, I imagine it would be acceptable to take the jacket off, but just general modesty standards of the 1890s, you kind of had to keep it on and you were just warm. I think people just were more used to being uncomfortable, if I'm honest. I also find it interesting, these women who'd go, like the British Empire to India, and they'd still be wearing a corset and a crinoline and all these layers, and it must have been just brutal wearing that much clothing and steel in that kind of heat. But people did it and only fainted somewhat. Yes? Yeah.
So is there a blouse underneath that?
I'm cheating a little bit today. Yes, it's a man's dress shirt I borrowed from Mandy, and, and kind of tucked in there.
Worn a
Yes.
blouse underneath, so
Yes, so, really get into all the dress history. Lock the doors, no one gets to leave. The layers that you'd wear at the time, you sort of had to wear an underlayer. So like a chemise, or often called combinations that have like those like bloomer pant like underwear, bloomers attached to a tank top, and then your corset on that. You never put a corset over bare skin. One, it's horribly uncomfortable, and two, the sweat from your body soaking into the corset. Corsets don't wash well. The steel will rust, the material will lose its rigidity, and they're very expensive and you don't really want to risk it. So instead you would often wear a layer, always wear a layer underneath. Number one pet peeve with historical movies is when they have a corset over bare skin. That never happened. But then you'd often wear another layer over top, so you couldn't see that really hard corset line. If you just have a shirt over corset, you can see where the corset ends. So they would wear another shirt over top of that, often with ruffles to kind of hide it. And then you would wear your shirt, and then you would wear your jacket. So I'm cheating and only wearing 2 layers under here. I should be wearing 4 to 5. Yes.
I'm asked about your materials, and I'm also fashion.
Yeah.
With your coat that you're wearing, how thick is the wool?
This is probably honestly a bit too thick. It is fairly thick. This is a broadcloth. The pants are also wool. They're a little bit thinner. By all rights, I probably should have made the wool more of the kind of wool you'd make a suit jacket out of today. This is more like actual borderline coat, I would say. I was buying fabric online and I couldn't see it. It was the right color.
Also did want to ask if it's linen or cotton.
Underneath? Oh, this is cotton. There's also, I will say, cotton, like it's fully tailored under here to keep the lapels from being sad. So there's like a stiff cotton under there as well. Also getting into historical clothing nerds. Sorry, I talked too fast and finished early, so now you just get to hear me talk about clothing generally. After we're getting post-industrial revolution, linen really starts to die off. In the same way that now you don't see people wearing linen very often. Linen's quite expensive. Linen for a long time was like the cheapest material. Everyone was growing it, everyone was wearing linen shirts. It was something you could grow in your backyard. And it was a very, very common material. It doesn't industrially do well. In order to get the linen out of the plant, you have to essentially let it rot for like 6 months. And it's very hard to do that on an industrial scale easily. When everyone was making fabric at home, it was a lot easier to do. Cotton is much easier. You pick the seeds out and it's ready to spin right away. You don't have to go through this several-month process. So several people attempt to commercialize linen. However, this is in the 1860s, they're discovering that cotton is much, much easier to do this. So this is where you start to see the really strong rise in cotton as a fabric, and linen sort of gets shoved to the wayside and becomes more of a luxury product. Irish linen becomes a thing. So sort of very, very imported, special occasion fabric. Linen production never really recovered from the Industrial Revolution, I say. You can't really get that really fine linen anymore at all.
The working class factory workers and so on, I assume would dress quite differently than the upper middle class?
Yes, ish. The sort of basic uniform moving into this time was sort of the shirt and the skirt. If you're a working class woman, that's probably it for the day. It's more volume of clothing. If you're a really upper class woman, you might get changed 3-4 times a day. You're gonna have your dinner dress, your day dress, a walking suit, your tea gown for weighing around home. Whereas if you're a working class woman, you're probably wearing a skirt and a shirt. As industrial production comes in, these kind of like collared shirts become really popular with women because you can have 2 skirts that are a bit more expensive and then a number of shirts, and you have a new outfit every day and it's easily interchangeable. An upper class woman might wear that. She's probably just gonna be a little bit fancier, and she's almost certainly not gonna wear it to dinner.
Would the working class women forego the corset thing?
Probably not, no. So pretty much everyone's wearing corsets at this time. It takes a long, starting when corsets first begin in the 1500s, it takes a while for that to sort of trickle down into the lower classes. But once it does become associated with morality, and it becomes a thing. The term like a loose woman kind of comes from wearing a loose corset, implying that you took it off fairly frequently. Or you tied it yourself. You didn't have your husband tie it for you. So there is this idea of the corset. There's interesting paper I read once about corsets in prison systems, and they weren't necessarily giving women corsets, and they were very, very upset by this, and sort of manufacturing their own or making them out of more like really tough vests out of stiff fabric. So like sort of taking a stiff buckram and making a corset instead of like the fully boned metal satin. You're not going to be necessarily wearing that. It's going to be a bit more simple. There were also some specially manufactured ones, specifically working class women, that were extra strong along the busk in the center, because if you're bending over and doing things, you're going to break that pretty quick. And also relying on cording instead of the metal, putting in rows of cord literally stitched in between fabric. So it's thick, it's shapewear, but it's a lot bendable and a lot cheaper. Yes?
This is just an aside. My grandmother was born around 1900, and in 1950s she was still wearing a chemise with a corset. And
Oh, wow.
also had, I think, whalebone.
Mm-hmm. The whalebone is a lot nicer, I will say. It wasn't very illegal to get now. I know. It's interesting. It kind of experiences a bit of a revival in like the 1950s. Especially Christian Dior was pulling from these like older aesthetics, and he goes for that really small waist, big skirt. So women start wearing like girdles and boned bodices, and a lot of his dresses actually have the boning instead sewn into the dress. So they sort of send it out, so you're not wearing an old-fashioned corset, but you are. Yeah, that's incredible that she was still doing it. Yeah, it takes a while to go away, and a lot of women who had been wearing it their whole lives, it felt, I think, very naked and improper to not wear one. I will say it is kind of nice. You don't have to worry about your posture. It does it for you. Yes.
I'm intrigued by the idea that this outfit ended up in a Japanese museum.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any information about that, or to how they might have acquired it?
I believe it was worn in Japan. So Japan is interesting, where for a long time it was very, very entirely closed off to Western influence. And so when that sort of ban opened, people were very excited about Western fashion. And they pulled all sorts of Western fashion in and started wearing it and imitating things that they saw. The Kyoto Fashion Institute is a really, really big museum. Kyoto was a huge textile manufacturing city. I really want to go. If anyone wants to come to Japan with me. So they have some wonderful, fabulous dresses also of very Western style, like that bustle, the corset, but made out of Japanese fabrics. And it's interesting to see these go across. In Europe, they were also very intrigued by Japanese fabrics coming out. They loved the fabrics, and this sort of Orientalism came through. And Japan was very intrigued by this Western silhouette, which was very different and architectural and shaped. So they kind of end up on the same shared ground in a way, imitating each other.
This is about as far from a kimono as you can get.
Pretty much. And I think there were some women in Japan who were very excited about that fact.
Just like we were excited about pants.
Exactly, yeah. I love the ones that are kimonos sewn into bustle dresses. They've got like the big sleeves, but then a bustle in the back. Some of them look quite odd, but the fabric is just lovely. Oh, yes?
You know what? I wore pants a lot in the 50s and 60s.
Why weren't you photographed downtown Maslin?
I don't understand that. That just blows my mind, because I grew up wearing dungarees
Yeah.
and then jeans and then pants.
I will say I could find children wearing pants. It was more adult women that was a little bit tougher. And I think we also have a lot of photos of special events. Like it's... Okay. I think we also have a lot of photos of special events. So like 4th of July parades, so I think people were a little bit more dressed up. I really thought it would be easier. I thought I'd go to 1950s, 1960s, and there'd be women in pants galore in our archives, and I was a bit surprised. But yeah, then hearing from some women who were telling me that they were banned from their university lectures, or if they went to, their mother wouldn't let them wear pants to church, and things along that line. Like it did.
I did live in New York City. Maybe that had.
Oh, you were probably a little bit more fashionable than Maslin in New York City. Yes.
When I started working at the printing company in Canton, Ohio in the 1980s, we were not permitted to wear pants. We had to wear dresses or suits. And if we did wear pants, it had to be
Oh my goodness, that's so late.
In the 70s, I still had to wear dresses to school instead of we were on leggings.
Yeah, it's shockingly recent from my perspective of having always grown up with pants. It really wasn't very long ago that it was.
Yeah, because we're not that old.
Yeah. Any final question? I see Margie standing. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening and asking good questions.